you just give us your background a little bit on, reporting on religion and various congregations? That's largely what we have known you as around Binge and around the Dig. So it's great. I mean, the more people who know their beats, the better. You're a rare breed these days, but you
Right.
certainly know yours inside out. So where did it start for you? How long you been doing this?
Well, I went to graduate school at Boston University in the religion department. My focus at that time was actually Turkey. So my interest in the religion department is I wanted to study religion and politics in Turkey. So I did a degree based largely on learning about Islam. So not just Islam in Turkey, because that's really specific, and most departments aren't teaching just about how
It still
Muslims
covers a
practice in
couple
Turkey.
million people, though.
Right. So my education was like more generalized in Islam and the like theoretical thinking about religious studies, how to read religious practices, religious doctrines, and in a sociological fashion. This is not theology school, which is what a lot of people assume. I was not there to think about what God is, what God wants, what God means. That's not important when it comes to a religious studies liberal arts degree. It's talking about how people relate to religion and God in the real world, like what is happening on the ground here. And so I did that, but living in Boston, it's hard to just talk about Turkey when my interest in religion is more generalized. I really am fascinated by all kinds of aspects of religion, all kinds of faith, traditions, and I love religious architecture and any kind of like interesting or new religious practice that I don't know about. I'm like, oh, ooh, that's so fun. And so I started doing more local focused writing and reporting, and so the Dig was a natural natural outlet for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's a great beat because there's just a lot of things that slip through the cracks, and certainly, the Globe has done great religious reporting over the years. It's not like it's not, in Boston, a lot about the Catholic Church, but others as well, and not just obviously the clergy sex abuse scandal, but a lot of the fallout from that has been building related, the sale of a lot of Catholic churches, but of course not just Catholic churches. We're in an extremely gentrified city now.
Yes.
And just real quick, some of the other kinds of stories that have come up before are, nobody needs an expert on religion until they do, right? Until something happens, and there's a lot of explainers. So I really love the work that you did with us on the city of Boston's PSA ads that never, they were really more pandering than not. So it just comes up in various. So this one, though, I mean, this series that can you just tell us about the application process? I know this is like it's not just you writing a couple articles, and of course you're not alone in the process, but it's so perfect because we're obviously focused on a lot of housing stuff here. And when we're talking about housing, obviously a lot of the stuff that we cover are, frankly, people who are not buying the luxury condo. So we end up covering, more of that side of things, right? The struggle for housing and stuff. We're not going to go and necessarily cover luxury housing from like the, hey, great new luxury housing perspective. This, though, is such an awesome kind of angle into it. So are you a walker? Like, where did the idea first come from? Just kind of
so I am a walker. I've always kind of been fascinated by buildings that have a former life and now have a new use. I think it's really cool. I mean, I don't know, there's something ineffable about it that really is attractive, especially because I really love history. My undergraduate degree is in history, so I love any space that has a really interesting history. The initial kind of spark that made me ruminate over this and eventually spiraled into this series. Actually never really made it into any of the pieces. I couldn't find a great way to fit it in. So what happened was, most of the time I'm driving, so I'm not like looking like right or left, I'm focused on the road. But one time I was in a bus, and we were going over the Route 1 bridge, and I looked out the window to the left and I saw a church that had been turned into a Dollar Tree. And I was like, what the hell is that?
In the Bunker Hill projects.
Right.
I was just looking at footage of that. That's so crazy. We're doing a thing on the Bunker Hill projects. And yeah, that,
okay.
And some of the people I was with grew up going to that church, and they're just horrified by that.
Yeah. And I was just like, that is, there's so much going on here. Like, what is that? I need to know more about this. And because, you know, most of the churches you see are turned into luxury condos. And like the fact that like this was just such a weird thing. I've never seen like a discount store in a church before. And so when my co-writer researcher did come to town, ALYSSA MALDONADO-ESTRADA, she's at the College of Worcester. No, not College of Worcester. We have to cut that out.
I got it.
She's at Kalamazoo College. Sorry, Kalamazoo College in Michigan. She came to town. We did end up visiting that because I had actually never even gone there, because where I live in Boston is nowhere near that, and I had no reason to go there. But I finally was like, okay, so you're in town. Let's go there and see what is going on. So the Dollar Tree is in the basement of that church. The actual church space that people would think of the church space is still empty, and I couldn't get any responses from the company that owns the space. So
I can explain it all. It's going to be part of the new construction that they put in the Bunker Hill project.
Oh, okay. Because they never returned my, like, they have a big sign with a number on it that no one's answering that number. Like, they're not, no one was returning my calls for that. So that's how I actually got interested in this, because of that church. And I'm glad to hear that we're going to be writing more about it, because it's been bothering me for years.
And I have all the B-roll to put. I have the footage to put when you're talking about it right there.
Yeah, great. So that made me want to think more about how churches were being converted for other uses in Boston, and made me more aware of how many are being sold, are being converted, and mostly into luxury condos. And being a person who is not of generational wealth living in Boston, the housing market is insane. You know, so it's something, of course, that I think about. And so, you know, the combination of religious architecture, historic reuse, and the crushing housing market is what really kind of has been the driver for this. And so this past spring on Twitter, there's this grant organization funded through the Luce Foundation at Northeastern, and it's called Sacred Rights, and they fund scholars and scholarship of a more public level on religion. So in the past, they've produced some really great long form pieces by PhD scholars, and I was following their Twitter account. I was reading what their people they were funding were producing, and I saw they had a call for journalists who were looking to partner with a scholar on a project. And because my background is not on religious architecture, I have a Christian background, but I didn't study Christianity necessarily all that much academically, and so I thought this was the reason I kind of have not been writing about this is because I really feel like I didn't have the expertise to write about this topic. And so when I saw this call out, I thought, this is a perfect opportunity. I can get a scholar who will help me understand what I'm looking at, and interpret, the interviews, and to help me find historic, sources on some of these churches, all this kind of stuff that I would not necessarily have the bandwidth to do or the knowledge to do. And so I got in contact with them, and they thought it was a really great idea. They really loved the idea that we were going to be doing this with the Dig. They loved the idea of partnering with a local paper, and specifically an independent paper. So it was just a really great fit. And so we went through an application process, and I was able to bring in a fantastic scholar who has written a lot about Christianity and changing gentrification, changing parishes and gentrification in Brooklyn. And she also had done some scholarship on the North End, because she's talking about religious festivals. And so, the North End festivals are one of the few places in America where these kind of old school Italian Catholic festivals actually happen. So she did have a nice, a background in the kind of, religious atmosphere of Boston. And she's really been an invaluable resource, both with research and writing. And
So she actually knows why they put the money on the Virgin Mary.
I bet she does.
Because I've been asking my family members for 40 years, and nobody has a good answer. They just go put it.
I bet she could tell you all about it.
Right.
I still
my kid is now asking, so I guess we'll have to figure that out. So. All right, so we'll get in. I want to get into a couple, because like I said, I don't have line edits. It's your beautiful writing as always. Just a couple architectural things, and I've sectioned some stuff out. But first, on the first piece, we've had a great reception. It was a cover story in the Dig. Why did you pick that one, those places first? You got a lot in there. Were there a couple different subjects? What made them? Because we've spoken about a couple of churches like the Dollar Tree. It didn't really pan out. They didn't make for. Is that because there's no community attached to it at the current moment? Is that the secret ingredient here? Is it a community story also?
Yeah, it is very much still a community story. Like the Dollar Tree and the church parish there has been a little bit of reporting around that, and there are people who, like you said, they are talking about how they went to church there. Right. It's really kind of more of an anomaly, an outlier in this phenomenon. So, unfortunately, it didn't fit well within the narrative of gentrification, and then, gentrifying the former churches, and because it didn't really gentrify yet.
Right.
So it really was. Right, it's on its way. So it kind of just was this like strange
I will
thing
say,
outside of everything else.
To give you the background real quick, the background is that was basically, and that was basically the only like safe haven for a lot of kids who grew up around there, and just a resource in general. Even though a lot of the old interviews from television in the 70s, they would go to the Catholic Church. That's where basically that was the social services of the whole area. So as the neighborhood fell apart, Catholic Church fell apart. But anyway,
right. And also the Catholic Church angle, and the sale of the Catholic churches and the community pushback, that has been covered, of course, quite a bit. I read part of a book on this.
The Trinity Church thing was huge, because people think there are sorry, I have a daughter going nuts in the background.
That's fine.
The Trinity, because people, there's certain I don't know if it's powers or like healing.
Yeah. I did encounter that a little bit, because I looked at that, because I was within the kind of the gentrification in the South End specifically, right? But I didn't want to focus as much on the whole Catholic parish, the fallout from the clergy abuse scandal, the money, like all of that has been covered quite well by bigger outlets. And so I wanted to talk about places that haven't been you know, and parishes or churches that haven't been as much in the spotlight.
Well, there's something else too, Claire, is that, you know, unless we're really, I think, I mean, I have to check my numbers, but unless we're talking about the North End or West Roxbury, we're not talking about Catholic populations necessarily that are walking to church. So
Right.
this is a community. So, I mean, let's get to it. So Ebenezer is, as opposed to, there are several subjects of your last story. Why did this place warrant its own? And I'm not questioning it. It's fantastic. It certainly holds for 6 pages. But you know, for you, you know, just, and by the way, the history is fantastic, and we'll get so
Well,
you know,
that's
is that what it is?
ALYSSA. You know, she did a lot of that research. So, you know, thank you to her
Yeah,
for
incredible.
helping to, you know, flesh that out.
So is
Because
that what put it over the top as being kind of warranting its own feature treatment for this one institution?
yes, I mean, when I was doing this research to like flesh out this series of like what are the topics I want to cover, and I came across the case of Ebenezer Baptist Church, and it was one of those things that it really struck me as something that was you know, had a lot of puff pieces around it, but no one ever really was talking about like what are the real issues here. This was you know, the same impetus I had when I did the piece on the Muslim harassment PSAs. It's like, oh, there's all these puff pieces, but no one's really talking about like, well, was this actually a right thing to do? Was this effective? Like what? And then nothing, you know, then they never really appeared. And so it was one of the things that I was like, okay, somebody needs to talk about this deeper, because this is not just like Mayor Walsh going there and declaring this Ebenezer Baptist Church Day and everybody's happy. Like this is a story that delves into a lot of issues that the city is facing, not only gentrification, but of course, like the racial element of gentrification, and, you know, aging congregation and their ability to actually maintain their buildings, and, you know, deep history. It's not just a historically Black congregation, it's a historically Black congregation that was founded by formerly enslaved people who moved here. And it was, you know, so it has that very, very kind of deep emotional history for a lot of people. And so I really thought that we need to talk about this, and it brings to issue a lot of bigger historical things that need to be talked about in the city, like the movement of the Black population throughout Boston's history, and how their history has been kind of systematically erased as they moved through the city from Beacon Hill to the South End, and now, you know, Roxbury, and being pushed out of the city because of gentrification and housing prices. And so I wanted to use this as a vehicle to tell that story, and to make people aware of the fact that, you know, this is still an issue, and it's ongoing. The gentrification in the South End is, you know, it seems like it's complete, but it really is still ongoing.
Oh, it's any little nook and corner that can be, yeah, I don't know how people deal with the construction, frankly.
Yeah, and it's
so this church, just to be clear, they are having how long have they've been serviced in Abington, which, for those who don't know, that's about 5 towns south of the city. There's not, you know, we're talking about a 40-minute commuter railroad. I mean, it's not accessible, so, you know, you'd have to have a car. It's not the kind of thing where it would take your entire Sunday, and that's even being generous. If Massachusetts public transportation really operated on Sunday, good luck getting a commuter rail to a bus. So it's, you know, it's not like an actual option probably for some people.
Right. So they have to address those issues. I mean, they already were addressing the issues of limited parking and accessibility in their old church in the South End, because most of the people had been already pushed out of the neighborhood. This used to be a church that people walked to, that, you know, this is one of the people we interviewed. This was the church that she walked to as a little girl, and But at this point, everybody we interviewed, you know, had been pushed out of the neighborhood because of gentrification. And so that was part of the reason why they wanted to they were already looking for space elsewhere. But now, you know, moving to having to move, that creates bigger problems. You know, I think they are talking about finding transportation to bring people there, but again, the transportation issues are still going to be an issue. Like, it doesn't solve that problem. It's
this congregation member, Terrence Wolfert, told you, you know, and family history with the church that has this line. It's not just a personal loss. It's hold on, it says, I think, yeah, there are no Black African American churches in that neighborhood. The character of the neighborhood has changed. It is not our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And, you know, just for those watching this who maybe haven't read the piece yet or don't get to it, you know, it's worth noting that yes, things change, but this church has been there for 150 years. We're not talking about just, you know, it's weathered many changes of the neighborhood, and certainly changes that were gentrification like, that weren't necessarily called gentrification.